Today, and with the first pick, we're wrapping up our summer scouting series with the defensive backs. And the last time a safety was the first DB off the board way back in 2007. So will that change in 2026? We'll talk about it. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Ran Carthon. This is episode 285. And Ran, because you're dying to know, there are 260 days till the 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh, PA. And just a reminder, you can check out all the position groups we've hit so far on the old podcast feed as far as summer scouting goes. And before we get into our five favorite defensive backs with the consensus with the first pick rankings for summer scouting here, let's hit a little bit of news, Rand, and let's start with Travis Hunter, who we had both James Gladstone and Andrew Berry, the GMs of the Jags and the Browns, on the podcast earlier this summer to talk exactly about that trade. And it felt like moving from 5 to 2 was rich in terms of what James and the Jags paid, but with the understanding that probably more wide receiver than DB for Travis. Looks like Travis is playing both. So how do you feel about that, given the fact that he can play 100 snaps a game in terms of his endurance? But any concerns about the injury issues if you have him out there? I understand why you do it, but are you trying to pull back the reins, or are you saying let's see what happens?
I mean, first and foremost, is anybody surprised that he's playing both ways? Like, this is what made him unique. This is what made him one of the best players in college football. This is what won him the Heisman Trophy last year. So, surprise, for those who who didn't think this was going to happen. I mean, it's like it's something we've never seen before, right? And for a guy to be able to play it full time, we've seen guys play on one side and switch over for another in terms of a package. But, man, look, let's enjoy it. I don't have any concerns because this is what Travis has always done. This is all Travis knows, is to play both ways. He's a well-conditioned athlete. Let's just enjoy it for what it is because we're witnessing history, and just it's good to be a part of history.
Our buddy Pete Prisco was in Jags camp last week, and he talked to Travis after practice. He said it was the hottest day that he can remember in Jacksonville, and Pete is, we call him the mayor of Jacksonville, and he loves hot weather. He said it was like Travis was just having a leisurely walk through the park. He was unfazed by the weather, unfazed by being out of breath because he is the best conditioned athlete. And Pete said watching him, and we sort of saw this at the pro day, he's never seen a better natural hands catcher than Travis. So to your larger point, Rand, why wouldn't you do it? You traded up to get him. Let's see how explosive he can be. Let's talk about his teammate at Colorado, who we all thought was going to be a first-round pick, and Shedeur Sanders ended up going in round 5. And I think throughout the entire training camp process, he's said and done the right thing. He's been incredibly humble. He's taken his reps when he's gotten them, and there haven't been very many. He's going to start the Browns' Week 1 preseason game, and only he and Snoop are going to play, who they just signed because of some injuries at quarterback. Two things. What does that say about where Shedeur is in the pecking order? And he has been mostly QB4 throughout this process in the last few weeks. And number two, and perhaps more importantly, what do you want to see from Shedeur? Because I remember 2 years ago when Dorian Thompson-Robinson played in his first preseason game, he lights out, and I was blown away, and I thought he might have an opportunity to parlay that into a better NFL career than he's had so far. So what do you want to see from Shedeur, and what does it mean in the overall picture?
I think for the overall picture, man, if you're Shedeur, you couldn't ask for a better situation to have right now than to be able to go out and start and know that you're at least going to play a full half with some form of the ones, whether it's some guys from the O-line, some guys, on the perimeter, or possibly in the backfield. This is what you wanted. You wanted these reps. You wanted these opportunities. I had the opportunity to speak to Gerard Cherry, who's who covers the Browns, yesterday, and you could hear it in Gerard's voice from the Browns people and fans, like they're excited about this. He told me yesterday that throughout practice, because they actually have a quarterback meter out there where the fans and the reporters are clocking everything that these guys are doing. And he says consistently throughout this whole thing, Shedeur has completed passes at a 70% clip. And he said in his mind that Shedeur is the number 2 quarterback there. And if you can go back into our past podcasts, I've always said that I've always felt like Kenny Pickett would be the odd man out there, just based off the simple fact that Dillon Gabriel is a 3rd-round pick. He's not going anywhere. And I felt like Shedeur Sanders would have the opportunity. If they made it even out, he would have the opportunity to pass those guys. And like I said, this is the opportunity that he's looking for. So I'm excited to see him. I do believe this will probably be the highest rated preseason game we've ever seen in
Yeah.
league history because I think everybody be tuned in to watch.
All right. Let me ask you about another quarterback who's going to start in week one of the preseason. He is 2 years into his NFL career, going into in year three. What do you want to see from Anthony Richardson? Because I would imagine the answer isn't dissimilar. In and out of the huddle, avoid pre-snap penalties, making good decisions with the football, getting through your reads, not panicking in the pocket. But we haven't seen that consistently from Anthony Richardson as well. This might be his last go round in Indy if things go sideways. So what do you want to see from him?
I say start with the simple word consistency. Consistency, like you said, it starts with getting guys in and out of the huddle. If you know his history, he never called a play in the huddle until he got to the NFL. So that's still a part of his development. And we're talking about a guy that didn't play a ton of football in college, hadn't played a ton of football in the NFL due to injury. And so this is still a part of his maturation process. So consistency overall, and then just being able to move the offense, convert third downs, and doesn't always in the preseason doesn't have to end in touchdowns, but let's end in points. Let's see how he works through these different game scenarios and situations that'll pop up and just see how he handles it.
Yeah, no, that'll be interesting to watch for sure. And this every time I talk about Anthony Richardson, we throw up this graphic, and this would be motivation enough for me if I'm AR5 because you don't want to be on the same graphic with Tebow and Jamarcus when it comes to completion percentage. Just because while I'm sure they're fantastic people, it's below 50%, and that's not where you want to be as a starting NFL quarterback. One last thing I want to run by you. And you and I sort of talked about this. You sent the news along when Kyron Williams signed his new deal with the Rams, 3 years, $33 million, I believe. He's top 10 now in terms of average annual value for running backs at around 11 million per year. If you're James Cook, are you calling your agent and saying, "Hey, what's going on here, and why do I have to keep sit down practice?"
Well, I looked it up yesterday, and their numbers are very, very similar in terms of total
Okay.
touches, yards per carry. And Kyron actually, I think, has six more career rushing touchdowns with 26, and James Cook has 20. And James Cook has played in nine more, no, excuse me, 11 more games than Kyron at this point. So it's right there together. To me, this having this deal done at 11 million per year should push James Cook's deal over the top and get the deal done.
And I'll say this about Kyron. I remember talking to him at the combine. I'm sure you talked with him through the pre-draft process. And one of the things he wanted to make clear, because I thought he was one of the best blocking running backs coming out in the draft that year, that he could do more than be just a blocker. He certainly has been more than that. Ran the 4.65, so that wasn't the best start to how he wanted to begin his NFL career in terms of where he was drafted. Just goes to show if you get into the right system and do the things you're capable of, you can get paid whether you run a 4.2 or whether you want to run a 4.65. So congratulations to Kyron on that. We'll see what happens with James Cook and his future, whether it's in Buffalo or somewhere else after the season. But for now, Rand, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get into our top five DBs and our consensus summer scouting with the first pick rankings. We'll do it right after this break. All right, Rand, before we look ahead here, let's look back at last summer's with the first big summer scouting rankings for our defensive backs. And as always, I'll have you grade them. Will Johnson was the number one player on my big board. A cornerback had never been drafted first overall in recent memory, at least, not off the top of my head. And obviously, he ended up going to the second round. Wasn't as fast as we thought he was going to be, but the reports out of Arizona with the Cardinals are through the roof, and he's a chance to be a starter. Number two, Travis Hunter. We're living in a world where Travis Hunter wasn't number one in something. Obviously, the second overall pick, so we got that part right. Benjamin Morris, number three out of Notre Dame. He battled a hip injury, I believe. Ended up being a second round pick, and if he's healthy, he's a fantastic player. Number four on our list, Denzel Burke. Ended up being a fifth round pick out of Ohio State. Up and down season. Thought he played better the year before. The year prior to that, 2023, he struggled as well. So he's shown glimpses of being able to do it, just hasn't put it together consistently. And then finally, Malachi Starks out of Georgia, 27th overall pick. Unfair pick, if you ask me, as a Steelers fan. Went to the Ravens, be teamed up there with Kyle Hamilton's having a great training camp, according to reports as well. What do you think about that group?
No, I give it a B. I think all those guys were right in terms of the top five, probably in my opinion, with the exception of Denzel Burke. You saw my smile when you said Malachi Starks. I was a big Malachi Starks fan. And for me, Travis was my number one player on the board. from start to finish going into it. So, yeah, I think it was a good solid group and give you a B. Good job, Ryan.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take a B anytime. If you see my report card, a B was rarely seen on that thing. Here's some names that were drafted in real life that we didn't touch on and weren't necessarily late to the game, but we weren't talking about them until the fall. Jahdae Barron ended up being a first round pick for the Broncos. Max Harrison, first round pick for the Bills. He just had suffered a knee injury. He's not going to be out for the season, but he's going to be slowed by that. Nicky Manwari, insane athleticism out of South Carolina, ended up getting drafted by Seattle. Trey Amos, Andrew Makuba, Darian Porter, all second round picks. Porter was an early third round pick. So a couple names we missed there, but that's what makes it fun. All right, producer Sharon, let's take a look at our individual rankings this time around, Ran and Ryan. And no surprise here, number one overall, Caleb Downs, Carthon. You have adopted him. He is your guy. And I'm interested to talk about him because you had an opportunity to sit down with him and you got a chance to know him. So I'm curious to know about that. Number two on my list was Chandler Rivers, 5'10" unofficial, officially 5'8". So I want to talk to you about what that means because those are 2 inches that are very important in the position he plays. Jalen Kilgore, who I liked a little bit more than you did, maybe a lot more, out of South Carolina. Avieon Terrell, A.J. Terrell's brother, plays at Clemson as well. And then Jermod McCoy was my number 5. You had Jermod number 2. Worth noting, he suffered an ACL injury in January, so we'll see what that means for his availability at any point this fall. You had Avieon Terrell 3. Malik Muhammad was also a name that was popular this summer. I watched him. He didn't make my top 5, but you had him at number 4. And then you had Chandler Rivers at number 5 out of Duke. All right, first up, let's start with Jalen Kilgore out of South Carolina. He is our consensus number 5 player. And again, I liked him more than you, so I want to hear your thoughts on this. Played 3/4 of the snaps in the slot, played in the box, rarely played safety. They put him back there occasionally. 200-meter guy. Did have 5 interceptions last year, which got my attention. And going back and watching him with Nicky Manwari and all those guys in the front four, that team should have gone undefeated. I don't know. I don't know how they lost the game because he was a part of an insanely athletic group. In my notes, I said he played nickelback like wide receiver at all 3 levels. Long-legged, long-armed, big slot who moves like a much smaller nickelback. Gets in and out of his back pedal coming downhill. Long strider who looks like he can stride out in space and has legit makeup speed. But you weren't quite as keen on Jalen Kilgore as I was. Worth noting, he's not even 21 years old yet. He's 20 and a half.
Yeah, so I saw more of a fourth safety, more strong safety than free safety. I didn't see a NFL nickel type athlete just in terms of being able to mirror and match underneath in those man coverage situations, particularly against those slot receivers. I think he will have his struggles there. Now, because he has really good size, like he's going to be able to cover up guys in the slot, if you will, and he'll be a good guy to have in there to match up against some of those athletic F tight ends. But I just thought I thought he was a little leggy, a little tight in terms of his hip flexibility and transition quickness. And in the games I watched, I saw him give up a lot of quick in-breaking routes due to that hip stiffness. So I did see a guy that will strike you, has some heaviness to him on contact. And I liked his production. I just thought I was going to see more and didn't come away overly impressed. For me, of the safeties I watched, he was my number 4 safety, which is why he didn't crack my top 10.
Gotcha. 6'2", 219. And that's what makes this interesting. Obviously, you have 2 decades of experience evaluating guys, and I'm the media draft guy that's been doing this since 2018. So I like having different perspectives. Thank you for laughing at that part of it. All right. If you want to get another chuckle, I'll give you my comp, and you can turn off your camera and walk away in anger if you want. I said, and you're not crazy about his coverage skills. I didn't hate him. I said he was better in coverage, but athletically reminded me a little bit of Jeremy Chin.
It's not a bad comp, but I think Chin had a little bit more versatility,
Okay.
just in all the different things he could play in that being that nickel backer guy that you could walk up off the edge, you could blitz, and so I think he had a little bit more versatility. But I could see what you did there.
Okay. And again, he's 20 years old, so there's certainly room for improvement. And we've seen guys at every position come back and play lights out, and your opinion of them changes. Nicky Manwari wasn't on a lot of folks' radar last summer, and then he balled out, and he ended up being a second round pick. So we'll find out together how this works. I'm pulling for you, Jalon, even if Ran is not. All right, let's take another quick break here. When we come back, we'll get to maybe one of the most polished players in this draft class, Avieon Terrell out of Clemson. And we've talked. This feels like it's been the summer at Clemson. All the dudes we've talked about on both sides of the ball. But I'm excited to see him play another year. Also a very young, 20 years old. But we'll talk about Avieon Terrell. Excuse me, number 4 on the consensus with the first pick rankings right after this quick break. All right, Rand, number 4 on our consensus with the first pick, summer scouting DB rankings, Avieon Terrell out of Clemson, and unofficially 5'10", 180. And he would have been higher on my individual rankings had I known, and maybe this is unfair, that Chandler Rivers was not 5'10", but a little bit under 5'10". But either way, Avieon Terrell, in his own right, is a fantastic football player. His brother is A.J. Terrell, who played at Clemson, former first-round pick, who's still a very good defensive back in the league. Avieon plays almost exclusively outside, had 2 interceptions last year, 16 PBUs, 400-meter guy. I won't tell you and Sharon how fast he was because you guys will scoff at him. Great in both man and zone schemes. I thought he played bigger than his unofficial size, so if he's 5'9" or 5'11", I don't know, but he plays much bigger and stronger than that. He drives on those routes in front of him, consistently will be in position for the pass breakups, and that was why he had 16 of them last year. There was a lot to like about the way he played, the physicality with which he played, and my comp for him to get you going early, saw a little Max Hairston in the way he played, and he, again, is not even 21 years old yet.
Yeah, for me, I agree with that. He was good in both man and zone situations. One of my notes I have here, he just knows and understands how to play the position. And you could see that from one thing that was really impressive, particularly for a young corner, him playing from off. And when he's off 7, 8 yards off the ball, you don't see him pedal out of phase. He'll stay square and he'll remain, in position and allow those guys to kind of close the distance some instead of peddling his way out. And I think there's going to be corners that are more flashy, that are more athletic, but I think you're going to find a hard time finding a guy that's more complete and sound. And my comp for him was Chris Harris, that played for the Denver Broncos, because I think Avieon Terrell, I think he can play nickel. And that's due to his tenacity. I thought he was a very good in run support, very good tackler, aggressive. And you can see, I think he had 3 forced fumbles. And then just his ball skills. You talked about the PBUs. It's him being able to play the ball over his head and play through the hands of the wide receiver at the catch point in those competitive situations. So I really liked him a lot. I think, with McCoy being hurt going into the year, I think Avieon Terrell could enter, if you're counting in the injury, he could enter the year as the number 1 corner in this year's draft class.
Yeah, Tennessee's Ron McCoy, as I mentioned, towards ACL, and he is a built in the lab cornerback in terms of his physical measurables. One other note I had on Avieon is that he played outside corner like he was a strong safety because he came downhill looking to run through somebody and not shy away from contact. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, the first play of Devon Witherspoon's final season in Illinois where he came downhill and blew up. I don't even remember who they were playing, and that's probably better, so I don't have to call out that young man. Who was it?
I think it was Indiana.
It
was that bubble. There was that bubble screen, and he just read it. As soon as he saw the motion, he knew what was coming, and he just shot the gap. And those are hits that you got to meet me at the bus after the game to fight, because my mom's in the stands, and she saw her baby get hit like that.
But when you see that, and Devin Witherspoon was quote unquote undersized, so when we see 5'10", 180 unofficially for Avieon, maybe does your mind immediately go to maybe we have to see him more inside because of that size? And I mentioned that because a guy I liked a lot coming out of Missouri, Ennis Rakestraw, was drafted by the Lions, and he just cannot stay healthy. And that just may be a function of his size, whether he's lined up inside or outside. So do you feel more comfortable with Avieon inside, or would you play him outside even though he's 5'10"-ish perhaps?
No, I started him off outside. That's where he's made his hay. That's where he's made his money. And I come from the school of thought, and I understand the body composition and the weight and the injury concern. But if you've never been hurt at that size, then I don't want to project you being hurt now. So I don't know what Rakestraw's injury history was at Missouri. I'm sure I have it somewhere in my notes. I just don't remember it. But until a guy shown me that he's been hurt at that size, I have nothing to go off of that says he'll get hurt at this level.
No, and that's a good way to think about it. Don't overthink it, as I like to say. All right, number three in our list, Chandler Rivers. And when you talk to scouts, they see him as a day three guy right now, and I'm okay with that. And I'm fine talking up some guys that maybe aren't on everyone's radar because they have a chance to get better. But I was impressed with the way he played, given his size. Like I mentioned, unofficially he was 5'10". I think that's what it says on the Duke website. The verified numbers I later got was 5'8.5", 184. Plays mostly outside, but they use him in the slot about 15% of the time. 100-meter guy. I won't tell you what it ran. You know how that goes. 3 interceptions last year. I thought he can play inside or in the slot. I thought he's physical despite his size. Good in both man and zone schemes again. I thought he's a smart player who was consistently in the right place and had a nose for the ball. His play style reminded me a little bit of Max Harrison as well. Max ended up being 5'11", shade under 200. He might have been 185 to 195. I have to double check. But the ferocity stuck out to me. But I went back and looked, Ran, and it's a short list of guys who were sub 5'9" who were drafted. Forget about the first round, but even the second round. Bob Sanders was a safety, obviously. You probably played with Bob now that I think about it, 2004. Darren Williams out of Denver was 5'8". LaMarcus Joyner was 5'8". Tim Jennings was 5'8". They were all second-round picks. Alfonso Smith was 5'9". I think the Broncos with Josh McDaniels traded up for him out of Wake Forest. He didn't work out. So the point is that finding guys at that size playing that position drafted that highly, they're hard to come by. And more than that, either they struggle with injuries or they struggle with the size difference. So overall, what do you think about Chandler? And then what do you think about the size affecting his potential draft stock?
Yeah, I saw him as a number 3 corner with inside-outside position flexibility. I think he can get you out of games playing on the outside, depending on how you use him. I thought, although he was small in stature with average length, I thought he had good quick feet and short area bursts. One of the things I liked about him from the zone coverage was his ability to sink off leverages and feel route developing, carry one, feel two, and then, come underneath and jump it. So I thought that was really good. And I liked his ball skills and his ability to locate the ball. I thought he had good speed to turn and run and stay in phase vertically. And then I thought he was a willing tackler. He's just not big, and so you're going to see some of that. But I did like that. And I liked his overall, play style, even though he wasn't the biggest guy. He reminded me of a Meek Robertson, excuse me. It was a little undersized guy, but feisty, scrappy, could play both inside, outside. I do think Meek it was faster because I think he might have been a 4-3 guy coming out. But I think they were both similar in style and play size. So I like Chandler. I was excited to watch him after you put him on my radar. And so he was one of those guys that kind of shot up there for me.
So Meek was 5'8", 187. So right around that size, and I think he was a day 3 pick if I recall correctly. But I liked his tape too. But again, it's just that size thing. So look, fair or not, there's no way Chandler Rivers at 5'8.5" is going in the first round. Correct?
Yeah, fair. I mean, he would have to have some exceptional ball production that would at least make him a day 2 pick. But just based off of my grade, I have him again in that same Amik Robertson category. So he could go day 2. In the third, somewhere in there, but probably third, fourth round range right now.
And I think if he were 5'11", very well could be a first round conversation. And that's unfair, but that's where we're at. Like I love him. He's one of my favorite players in this draft class so far, but just based on history. So I love Chandler Rivers. I'm going to stick with him right now, Ran, but I hope he grows 2 inches this fall. How about that? Let's start there. All right. So we're down. Got 5, 4, and 3 in the books. Going to come back and talk about number 2 and number 1. And we're going to do that with Jermod McCoy. He'll be our next guy up out of Tennessee. 19 years old, Ran. We'll talk about Jermod, suffered that ACL injury in January, and what that means for him right after this break. All right, Ran, number 2 on our consensus with the first pick, DB Big Board, Jermod McCoy. He'll be 20 years old in a few weeks. So he is young, 6 feet, 193 unofficially. He looks bigger than that to me on tape. Started out at Oregon State in 23, Tennessee last season. He'll be there this season as well. Also played wide receiver in high school. My first note, I want to see how fast he is. Physical cornerback who can play man press. He can play on an island. He can play cover two. He did a lot of things really well, but the speed was my number one question, and I want to hear what you say about that. And that led to my comp, a guy who I loved, but the speed kept being a recurring theme last fall, and that's Will Johnson, second round pick, who ended up being, who, like as I mentioned earlier, is having a great camp for the Cardinals, is probably going to start there. So you like Jermod a little bit more than I do, maybe a lot more. So are you at all concerned about the speed? And then talk to me a little bit about what you're looking for as a team evaluator of a player coming off an ACL that's going to be last January. Is he going to play? What's that going to look like? How does that affect your evaluation?
I mean, honestly, it depends on the news that we get when you go into the school to find out, where he is in his recovery and his rehab. And being that it happened in January, depending on how the season goes, there's a chance that he could be back, let's just say late October, November-ish, and see how he does then. So I think that it remains to be seen. I didn't necessarily have a problem with the speed. I thought his speed was fine. I thought his speed was good. Now, in today's game, a guy that runs 4.46 is considered to be just okay, so maybe he's in that range, that 4.46 to 4.48, because I thought he had good speed to carry vertically. But I thought the thing that made him even better, where he didn't necessarily always have to open up and run, is that he had a good understanding of angles and how to cut guys off and pin guys into the sideline when he was carrying vertically. And you saw that repeatedly time and time again. The one thing I thought for the most part, his zone awareness was good, but I saw a few times where he didn't necessarily pass off those rub routes. And you saw that come up in a couple games. And as you can always tell when the other DB, throws the hands up, we call it being an open palms guy. You got the palms open trying to figure out what happened. But he was my CB1. Just based off of just pure talent, cover skills, and coverage ability. I thought, I thought he got stuck transitioning, getting in and out of breaks, but I thought that was not always due to a lack of flexibility, but just lower strength. And again, hearing you say that he's 19 years old, it makes all the sense in the world. He's still developing his strength, but I liked everything about him. I think he's a pure cover player. And I think when he, hopefully he returns to full health, like we've talked about on this show time and time again, it takes you 12 months to feel like yourself. And so right at the top of the pre-draft process is January, he'll be 12 months. So we can probably expect to see him do everything in that process.
Yeah, and my notes I put he had legit ball skills. He's a legit red zone ability to lock down wide receivers on the fades and the quick game as well. And again, he is also 19 years old, so you would expect he gets better. Also, let me ask you this: for someone who was in the league in the front office for almost 20 years, how far has the medical advancements come in terms of recovering from ACL? Because that feels like that's been a sea change. Forget about going back to Joe Namath when they had no way to fix the ACLs, but even the last 10 to 20 years, I feel like a lot has happened.
Oh yeah, it's changed drastically. There was a time where the ACL was the kiss of death, where most guys just never really fully recovered. It affected their ability to play moving forward. And I think, in the new era, I want to go back to maybe when Adrian Peterson tore his ACL, and he was back in a very, very short amount of time. And he, went on to have a great season. You want to go back even further, you look at Willis McGahee, who tore everything in his knee in that game against Ohio State. And then a month and a half later, after the combine, he jogged a 40 at Miami's Pro Day, which was crazy. Now, his recovery ended up taking a little bit longer, but to tear everything that he did and have the surgery and jog a 40 was very impressive. So medical advancement has come a long way with these injuries, and particularly in the knee. Now the next one to catch up is going to have to be the Achilles, because that's becoming the new popular injury for some of these guys.
Yeah, and I tell you every time we talk, I'm worried about that as an old person. So I like needing to make those advancements as well. What's interesting about AP is that we talked to Eric Sugarman, who was the head of medicine for the Vikings when AP had torn that ACL. Obviously, he worked with Rick Spielman. So we had him on the podcast, and he talked about, number one, it was miraculous because it was less than it was like 6 months or something because it happened
Six
like in
months.
December, January, and then he came back and he ran for an insane number of yards. The other thing is, AP was special in that there's one AP, and physically he was doing things that not even other NFL players were able to do. That Willis McGahee story is nuts, though. As someone who has torn their ACL, the idea you turn to jog 6 weeks after you had your ACL reconstructed is bonkers, bonkers to me, for sure. But I'm not worried about it. At 19 years old, at Jermod McCoy, excuse me, I think he's going to be fine, and I think he's going to get a lot better. And talk a little bit about the leaps that these players can make when you are fresh out of high school, essentially, as still a teenager, in terms of understanding your role in the offense. Because even when you talk to players who are first, second, third year in the league, and they're playing defensive back, for example, there's still so much they don't know and not comfortable with, and they play slow, and you and I have talked about that. So I'd imagine there's a vast room for improvement just with the above the next stuff that McCoy can do as he gets more comfortable.
Yeah, and it's again, it's the analogy I like to use, Ryan. If we both left and drove to your house, you give me the directions. You're going to get to your house quicker than I am if we're leaving from the same destination because you're not thinking about making the right turn or is this the right turn? You're just instinctively driving there. Versus me, I have the directions. I know what to do. I know where to go, but I'm not moving as fast because I want to make sure I'm making those right turns. And for a player like Jermod, again, we have to remember this was last year, and he made first team All SEC last year in his first year at Tennessee in a new system, learning a new system. So this year was supposed to be his year to be comfortable, knowing what he can do, knowing the chances that he can take in certain coverage looks. And so that's what you were looking forward to. So it's going to be a process for all these young guys. They're coming in from these high school teams that just play cat coverage. Hey, you just cover that cat across from you. And as long as you do that, we're good. Versus going into, you see my sweatshirt, Ravenwood High School. We had a kid, Donovan Starr, who's a big time prospect that left Ravenwood High School and is early enrollee at Auburn. And he took his lumps in the spring because he was still learning how to play, at that college level. And at Ravenwood, they run a complex system on defense. You know what I mean? And so there's going to be growth because now you're not the best player on the field. You're going against other guys that are just as talented, if not more talented than you.
Yeah, and I think we get caught up on sort of forgetting those things, at least on the media side. And maybe, it happens in the league and maybe happens at these college programs as well because you're expecting so much from a 19-year-old who looks like he could be 27 physically, and there's just still so much room for growth. And, sometimes it's hard to be patient. But Jermod McCoy checks all the physical boxes. You just want to see it put it all together. Unfortunately, he had the knee injury, but I'm not worried about that, and it doesn't sound like you're too worried about it either. Before we take another quick break here and get to your son, where are you on my Will Johnson comp?
I think he's faster than Will. I think he's twitchier than Will, and I just think he's overall tougher than
Ooh,
Will.
ooh.
And it's just what the tape has shown me. So I like him, and I was a big Will Johnson fan, and coming into it, Will Johnson was my cornerback one. So I think there's probably a couple guys that you could probably compare him to from a full picture, full scale of ability standpoint than Will.
Last summer, Will Johnson's comp, even when you talked to some scouts, is he going to be Patrick Surtain the second? The answer right now, in terms of right, he didn't run a 4.3. But look, the training camp reports have been good. But all right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you have him on a scale, Will Johnson here, and then Patrick Surtain here, where are you putting Jermod? Let's put a bunch of expectations on a 19-year-old.
I put him in the middle. I'll put him.
Sorry.
I put him in the because I'll put him ahead of Will Johnson. I'll put him ahead of Will Johnson, but I was a huge Patrick Surtain fan just because of him being a technician. I was a huge fan of his coming out, so I had him in a different stratosphere than either of these guys. That's why I say the middle. I'm not straddling the fence.
Being a huge Patrick Surtain the second fan is like being a huge Peyton Manning fan come out. You really went on a limb on that one.
Listen, I'm gonna send you my report when we get off.
Okay, I look forward to that. In fact, as I was looking back over this, J.C. Horn actually went one pick ahead of Patrick Surtain. J.C.'s been good, but he struggled to stay healthy. Patrick Surtain is one of the best players in the NFL. But again, like I always say, Ran, we don't know. We all find out together. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll all find out together why Ran is actively trying to adopt Caleb Downs, our number one player for both of us on our with the first pick big boards. We'll talk about Caleb and his role and what that means right after this break. All right, we're up to number one. No real mystery here. Caleb Downs, safety out of Ohio State. One of my favorite players in this draft class. Currently number 6 on my big board behind a bunch of offensive tackles and Arch Manning, assuming he comes out. I'm going to give him a comp, and I don't care what you think about it because this is one of my favorite players back in the day, and he plays with this type of tenacity, smarts. Troy Polamalu. Now, Troy, I think, was only 5'10". Unofficially, I have Caleb at 6'0", 205, and you can let me know where you stand on that. Plays free safety, plays in the box, plays in the slot. Trying to think what else here. Oh, this is what I wanted to bring up. So, obviously, a cornerback's never been first overall, which means a safety's never been first overall. But looking back, you have to go back to 2004. The great Sean Taylor was the first defensive back off the board, safety or cornerback. He was safety at number 5. 2007, LaRon Landry went number 6 overall, first safety off the board. 2010, this is a fun one. Eric Berry, who's a really good player, 5th overall safety, one pick after, Trent Williams, still in the league, still dominating. And then the guy we talked about on the podcast yesterday, he was a second defensive back drafted after Morris Claiborne, but Mark Barron, who was a safety who eventually made his way to linebacker. So my point, Rand, is that it's rare in the last 20 years to see a safety be the first defensive back taken, certainly in the top 5. I think this could be a situation where Mr. Downs is the first defensive back also taken in the top 5.
No, I agree. And, I've loved this guy from the beginning. He was one of my favorite guys when I first watched him last year. So he's I have my reports here in front of me, and if I could show you on this iPad, he was the first guy evaluated this season for this upcoming draft class. But I think he's a starting rock and roll safety. I like him a little bit more at free safety. I think he has very few flaws in his game. In just the way he plays. I think he's a good overall athlete. I like his foot quickness, his hip flexibility, transition quickness. I think he's just very smart, very instinctive. And he does a lot of things that don't get noticed on tape, that don't show up in the stat sheet. And he takes things away. He understands the defense. He has good scheme recognition, takes away routes from multiple alignments, and he's very good in man coverage versus tight ends. I think he has good range, but you don't really see very many opportunities where he's in the post, where you see him pedal, flip, turn and run and go get it. And that a lot of that is due to the front that he played with at Ohio State. Just the ball had to come out quick. But you talk about a guy that's tough running the alley in terms of his run defending ability. Definitely not afraid to stick his face in the fan. I think he's a good sound tackler that just does a good job of coming to balance in space and getting his guy on the ground. You saw flashes of him having striking ability to knock people back, but he's just more of a sound tackler, get the guy down on the ground. And I think he has the makings to be a Pro Bowl safety. I know I've talked to a few scouts, and one scout I talked to yesterday whose team may actually be in the safety market. I don't know if they'll pick high enough to get him, but he used your line and said, hey, man, this is one you just don't overthink. He told me, and I want to quote him. I won't say who he is, but I'll quote him. He says, when a guy leads Alabama in tackles as a true freshman, it's pretty hard to say that this guy can't play football. And so, I really like this kid and had a chance to spend some time with him over the summer. He's just about his business. He's already a pro. He's professional. Learned that from his brother, Josh Downs. His uncle is Dre Bly, who played a long time in the league. And so he has, like I said, he has all the makings to be, one of those legit guys. And again, they're going to be the naysayers that say, oh, man, he doesn't, from him being a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick, he doesn't do this and he doesn't have the production that this guy had. Listen, man, show me a better safety in college football. Show me a better DB in college football, and then you can make the argument with me.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we get caught up in, whether it's in the media or in the league. Positional value and running back is the first thing that comes to mind. But Saquon Barkley proved last year that he actually is a top 5 pick. Center's another position that gets pushed down. But you can make the case that Creed Humphrey, maybe even Zach Frazier, could be first-round picks in a different world, a different draft, because they are incredibly important to making those offensive lines run. And the safety's the same thing. Kyle Hamilton fell down draft boards to the middle of the first round because he ran a slow combine time, ran better at his pro day. But there's no doubt in my mind that he's a top 15 or higher player based on what he brings to that defense. And that defense is without him. It looks completely different. In my notes, I put that I liked Caleb better than Malachi Starks last year, and I really like Malachi. And I said he's between Starks and Eman Wari in terms of the athleticism. I think he's a little better athlete than Starks, and Starks is a great athlete. Nick Eman Wari tested through the roof. But a lot of the things you talked about in terms of short area quickness, his ability to come downhill like he shot out of a cannon. I thought he had sideline to sideline range when coming from the heavens to play the run or play the quick game and get to the sidelines. All those things stood out time and time again. And I thought he moved short area quickness wise like he was a nickelback, like a corner, a 5'8" Chandler Rivers type guy, change direction. All that stuff flashed to me. If he's 6 feet, 205, do you care about that at all? Because I do not.
No, I don't. I think he'll be between 5'11" 1 and let's say 5'11" 4, 5'11" and a half. I don't think he's quite 6 feet. I think he will be in that 205 range, which is good for him. Now, the interesting thing is what is he going to run 40-wise? And how much will that affect him? How much will people look past the play speed that you see on tape versus the time speed? There was when B-Mac and I, when we sat down with him and his brother and interviewed him this summer, one of the questions we asked who would win in a 40. And it was kind of a toss-up, and then they both agreed that Josh would win in a 40. His brother, Josh ran, I believe, 4.48. Yep. And so it just leads you to believe, will Caleb run in that same 4.48 range, or will he be a low 4.5 guy, from, let's just say 4.53 and below? And if he runs 4.53 and below, that's still plenty fast. That's still up there, in terms of the top percentile in terms of starting safeties in the league. But to quote the great Ryan Wilson, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, people. This guy's a good football player. He's made of the right stuff. He's a guy that will wear the C on his chest in your organization. You bring him in, you don't look back, and just keep it moving.
And you talked about this yesterday when you did the linebackers. Like, you can have a linebacker who runs 4.3, but if he doesn't know where he's supposed to be, you want the grizzled 10-year veteran who runs a 4.7 because he is going to be in the right place. He's going to be able to get to certain gaps that an athletic linebacker who doesn't know what he's doing won't be able to do. The other thing I'll point out in terms of not overthinking it, Brian Branch got drafted in the second round because he ran in the 4.5s. I think he ran 4.58. He's a first-round pick. Kamari Lassiter ran 4.62. He's a starting cornerback for the Texans, and he is really good. Second-round pick. Arguably, it should have been a first-round pick. So I need you to continue to remind me not to overthink it, because if, God forbid, Caleb runs a 4.6, he is still one of the best players in this draft class. So let's all remember that. All right, Ran, summer scouting is in the book. We hit every single position group from start to finish. I think over the last 2 months, that's what we did. So that stuff is all in the book. So everyone, if you're a general manager watching this, we did your homework for you, so you can go back and check this stuff out. And then we'll circle back in the spring and see how right we were about that. All right, going forward, we'll be talking more about how these training camps and the preseasons go, and talking about these rookie players, and then looking ahead, of course, to the college football season. I'm excited for that. In the meantime, Ran, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And you can check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast. Scan that QR code there. Leave us a 5-star review. Your favorite player. We'll try to evaluate them on an upcoming podcast. See you guys in the next one. Have a great weekend, everyone. And we'll be back next week.